All right. So another A2A athlete story today. Chris, really, really happy for you to be joining me, taking time out of your extremely busy day and extremely busy schedule. So I really, really appreciate that. But as we always start, let's get to know you a little bit. Where you from? What sport did you play? Kind of give us the bio and background of Chris Dylewski.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Happy to spend a little time with you. So I like probably many of those listening played a whole bunch of different sports, but the one I played seriously was hockey. I'm from, as much as I'm from anywhere, Colorado. I come from, as you might have been able to tell, a military background, and I'm currently doing that for a living. And so we moved around a lot when I was a kid. But when asked that question, say I'm from Colorado because that's where I spent kind of my high school years. There in Colorado Springs, the beautiful Colorado Springs, and I played hockey all the way up through growing up through high school, and then was lucky enough to play for a couple of years in between high school and college, as is typical for hockey players, and then go and play at the Air Force Academy as a goalie from 2012 to 16.
That's pretty awesome. It's really cool. And, I've talked to a bunch of different athletes. You're the first hockey player we've had on here. So I'm really intrigued about hockey in general. I'm not by any means a hockey expert, but I love the game. I love the action and everything else. So intrigued to get into that. But before we even get there, you said you played a good number of sports growing up. What sports did you play? And, how long were you a multi-sport athlete until you said hockey is going to be my thing?
I think I tried just about everything. The ones that I played sort of into my high school years were golf, baseball, and hockey. I am still basically a golden retriever who walks on two legs, I think, than any kind of ball sport or anything like that. I'm just naturally really enjoy. So that is not my term, by the way. That's my fiance's term, maybe my mother's term. I actually honestly don't remember, but I take it as a badge of honor. I played basically everything, and really doing so at whatever level. But I played baseball and a little bit of golf up through high school, and then I think I was a single sport athlete starting my sophomore year of high school, and that's primarily because the off-season training for hockey began to get intense enough that baseball, which was kind of the last one that I played seriously other than hockey, became untenable.
Cool. What was it about hockey that made you want to play the game? Obviously everybody has different reasons, and there's either a parent influence or a sibling influence. What was it for you that was that really clicked and you said, I belong on the ice?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't think I have a great answer to it. I don't have any family connection to hockey. Neither of my parents can skate, at least not well. My mother takes it an apparently sick pleasure at attempting to do so, and leaning heavily on both my brother and I. And when we invariably fail to keep her upright, falls a lot and in spectacular fashion. So no family connection. The way I first got into hockey was our neighbors and a friend at school, in elementary school. His dad was coaching our age group hockey players, and he was a former player. And so I started to play and just immediately loved it. I ended up being a goalie. And so I think I chose hockey above the others, probably as a combination of I liked it the most, I enjoyed doing it the most, and I was best at it. I think probably not a coincidence.
Yeah. So what position did you play baseball wise?
A couple of different ones, but primarily as a catcher.
Yeah. I mean, no surprise there, right? The two positions kind of translate. What kind of skills, and it's something that, I've asked a lot of other people is when they're multi-sport athletes, obviously there's always some sort of crossover in the sports that they play. Being a goalie as well as being a catcher, there's obviously a crossover, not just from the gear that you're wearing, but from the skills aspect of it. How much of the things that you did on the field or things that you did on the ice did you really get to cross over and kind of utilize in both sports?
Yeah, I would probably say that my mother would answer this question by saying I picked the positions that would stress her out the most. I would probably say that I picked the positions that would be least likely to have me bored at any particular moment, and I could be on the ice all the time and on the field most of the time, and involved in most of the plays. And I actually do think that, all kidding aside, that second one has a lot to do with it. Hockey and baseball sort of both have one position that is involved a lot more than the others. I just really enjoyed being involved as much as both positions allowed me to be in the skills. I think I was a much better like defensive catcher, and I could never really hit. So that was kind of probably fate, right? So I picked the position in a different sport that allowed me to use what I think was decent hand-eye, and in terms of like the defensive part of that position, and I didn't have to start with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you said you had some siblings. Were there any sibling rivalries growing up that really kind of fueled the fire? I mean, I know with my siblings and my brother, I have a couple brothers and a sister, but my brother who I'm closest with, we're 8.5 years apart, but we still battled, like we were opponents for most of the time. Was it kind of the same for you and your siblings?
Yeah, absolutely. Brother, 3 or 4 years younger, played baseball, played hockey. Unfortunately, I think he was better than me at both. So yeah, definitely a part of our household as well. Lots of sort of your hockey players might be watching will know this well. Lots of knee hockey, scrapes and bruises accumulated in our household.
Yeah, so the living room rug kind of got the consistent wear and tear from the two boys, right?
Yeah, it did. Not to mention our knees. Yeah.
So what was it? You said you started decentralized probably around your sophomore year. And you kind of mentioned, you couldn't hit in baseball, but what was it truly about hockey that you said, this is my sport? And how far down the line were you thinking that hockey was going to be the thing that took you to the next level and, play for the Air Force Academy?
Yeah. I don't know. I've never been able to quite put a finger on why I enjoy hockey so much. I think that there's an element for me that's really great about hockey that kind of takes you away from your normal life and puts you in this kind of parallel universe. So everything changes, right? You put all this equipment on, you put a helmet on, and you kind of enter this arena that is very different, often very different weather from the outside world, and you sort of get to put on this whole new persona and enter this whole new world. I don't know. Maybe that's what appealed to me. I've always really gravitated toward it. I still play hockey, although at a very different pace and intensity than I used to. And I've just always really loved it. And I don't have a great answer as to why. I'm mostly just guessing out loud here.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you don't really pick your passions. Normally your passions pick you, right? And that's probably something that can be said with you in hockey. Now, when it came to starting to centralize, and, like I said, was there a thought that you had where you said, this is something that I want to do at a high level and that I think is going to be my ticket to playing at a high level and playing in college?
Yeah, definitely a part of that decision. Like I said, hockey was definitely the sport that I was best at, and I had always, or for most of kind of what I remember of my athletic career, considered it to be my kind of primary sport, and always wanted to play hockey in college. I there was a time period during which I thought maybe I could play beyond college, or maybe play for a living, but I don't know if I even myself believed that, other than just a sort of ephemeral kind of, yeah, sure, if that all lined up, then great. But I don't think I was ever really planning for that. Honestly, the kind of big goal in my head was to play in college. And so that's really as far out as I thought most of the time, and if I was being honest with myself.
Yeah. Now, when it came to playing in college, was it always, and you mentioned, you were, moving a lot as you were growing up, but was it always that you wanted to play for, the service academies or enter the service academy, or was it let's be recruited, let's get recruited, let's see what schools have to offer. What was your path to getting to that next level when it came to the recruiting process?
Yeah, so for me, it was a bit of a weird situation because I both knew that I wanted to play hockey in college and that I wanted to go into the Air Force after. I didn't necessarily intend on the Air Force Academy itself. And so to add into the weirdness of that situation, I lived in the same town as the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs there. So I knew that those things lined up really well. I also knew that coming from playing hockey full time and kind of going to class online on the side for a couple hours a week was a really high kind of quality of life for a young person. And the Air Force Academy was going to be a very different lifestyle. And so I was, if I'm being honest, intimidated by that and was definitely exploring other options, both because I think I was excited about experiencing something new and kind of outside my hometown, and because I knew it was going to be really hard, the Air Force Academy. And so I definitely explored other options like East Coast options. And to add to that sort of pile of variables, I was not highly recruited. In fact, you could probably say that I wasn't recruited almost at all. And ended up entering the Air Force Academy based mostly on my academic background, and basically being a walk-on to the hockey team. Though there's a little bit of gray area there, since I did have a relationship with those coaches, having played hockey in their town, and so I knew the coaches, they knew me, and so it was, a little bit of a not necessarily just cold intro, some random person kind of walking on, but
yeah. So what schools did you look at with seeing how intimidated you were with the Air Force Academy? What other schools were you looking at to have kind of the the normal college experience? Because being in the service academy is not a normal college experience by any stretch, or by any means. So what other schools were kind of on your radar?
Yeah, I wanted to go East Coast, and I wanted to go to someplace that had the best kind of academics that I could get to. So the big kind of Ivy League schools were really ones that I had in mind. Only problem with that is I couldn't get in to them without any sort of like hockey variable or anything. Who knows if I had been recruited to those schools, how that would have gone differently, but I wasn't. And so I think in the end it came down to going to some place like Hamilton, which is a great school in a Division III hockey program that's really pretty cool, or someplace like Denver, where I would have also tried to walk on to the hockey team, incredibly storied program and really high caliber program. And in the end, the Air Force Academy was just this great combination of variables for me that was impossible to say no to. So that's where I ended up.
Yeah. How did you get over the intimidation factor when it came to the service academy and entering and playing hockey at Air Force?
I didn't. I would say I was definitely still intimidated on day one, and frankly, still intimidated on the last day of the fourth year, probably. I think for me, it just was outweighed by my interest in all the upside, if that makes any sense. So the Air Force Academy, there's no tuition, and they pay you a very modest amount, but they pay you on a monthly basis, since technically you are now part of the Air Force. You don't pay tuition. Instead, you are paid all your housing and living and food costs are paid for. So that was huge. I just, not having to mess with any kind of student loan stuff and not having to ask anything from my parents was like a big deal for me. I also explored the ROTC scholarship route. And in the end, the kind of ROTC scholarship that I got in combination with the kind of offers that I had from schools to go there just based on academics and also to go play hockey, the academy was just way better, to be honest, because it's such a top tier academic institution. It's a great hockey program, and it was going to be for the reasons I've described, and also because I wanted to eventually do this for a living and fly for the Air Force. it was just too good a deal to pass up.
Mhm. So what, you kind of alluded to the academic side and, what you do for a living. What did you study when you went into school? What was that academic side that you decided to dip your toe into?
So I started out as an aeronautical engineering major, and I got most of the way through that program with a double major in foreign area studies. I was taking Chinese language courses and took a minor in that I did end up sticking with. But kind of right near the end of the aeronautical engineering major, I decided to switch. And what I went to was a history and political science double major instead of the aeronautical engineering and foreign area studies majors, which is not something I would recommend for anybody, especially anybody going to a service academy, which does not offer a 5th year, 6th year option. You will graduate in 4 years. It is decreed, and there's no real wiggle room in that. And so what that ended up doing is, because I decided, okay, I like what I got out of the engineering courses thus far, but I feel like I've got the baseline that I want. I don't want to be an engineer, and I don't want to do that in grad school. I then switched over to like history and political science. I had to take a huge number of classes in a very small window of time, which was not ideal, at least for my own sanity and sleep schedule for the last, call it 4 semesters at the Air Force Academy. So I finished with history and political science with a Chinese minor.
Yeah. So for normal college students like myself, I was able to, wake up at a normal time and go to class and, have fun with friends, stuff like that. So that's a normal schedule. For you, obviously things aren't like that. What's your day-to-day look like as a student athlete? And how did that prepare you for what you do now?
Yeah, they were long days with lots of different demands. Anybody who has done any level of research into the service academy is probably not surprised to hear that. My typical day at the academy would involve getting up pretty darn early. So I honestly don't remember at this point because it's been a few years now, but getting up somewhere in the 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. Range was probably normal. Get up, throw your uniform on. You wear uniform every day of the week. And if you are a freshman, you wear the uniform every day of the week, including Saturdays and Sundays. And then it is a combination of inspection, so making sure that you and your space look sharp and professional and are ready to go. And then very formal meals, sometimes involving gathering and marching to meals as a wing. Like the student body at the Air Force Academy is called the wing. And then classes, pretty regimented schedule with relatively little flexibility, at least in comparison to civilian quote unquote institutions, regular school. So I would be in class from we'll call it like 8 a.m. to noon on a normal school day, and then another pretty regimented meal where the whole wing eats together. Sometimes we would get together a half hour early and march to that meal as well. And then the afternoon would consist of typically either a bit more class, called another hour or so after lunch, or some kind of private time to work with instructors on whatever paper you're working on or whatever. There's lots of opportunity for that there for Academy. I would say that given what relative little I know about other colleges and universities, that the Academy is uniquely good at that, offering time for you to go work with professors one-on-one. So if I didn't have class after lunch or any kind of professional military development, because after all, we are not only graduating at the end of the 4 years with a bachelor's degree, but also with a commission of the United States Air Force. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have one of those two things after lunch. I would go work with the professor directly on a paper I was writing, or maybe something that I didn't quite understand from a lecture or what have you. And then most days I would have time for a really quick nap in between that and going down to the what we call the cadet field house, which is where the hockey rink and their gym was, and beginning the athlete part of my cadet athlete day, and that would begin what a process that will probably sound familiar to other student athletes, and that is, a 2 to 5 hour chunk of time that involves practice and then the gym and whatever kind of recovery stuff you need to have done before heading back up to your dorm. You live in a dorm all 4 years at the Air Force Academy, and getting started on schoolwork, which if you are foolish enough to change your major late in the game, you have plenty of. And so then not enough sleep leads into another early wake up and rinse and repeat.
Yeah. So yeah, like, I mean, you've got to be a completely structured human as expected, right? Was there anything that you took from either, being a student or being an athlete, that was surprising to you, or something that you expected? How prepared were you for this new life in the Air Force?
I would say in comparison to average, and by average, I mean just kind of your normal high school senior who decides to go to the Air Force Academy, I was probably a bit more prepared. And that is primarily not due to, my own being special in any way. It's primarily due to the fact that I had 2 years of extra time to kind of grow up before I showed up. So we talked about it a little bit already, but between high school and college, I played hockey for 2 years. Pretty normal for a hockey player. Pretty not normal for just somebody showing up at the Air Force Academy. And so I had a couple of years to kind of grow up, and I would say a different and more mature human at 19 than it would have been at 17. I also had a military background, specifically an Air Force background. So I understood the world a little bit better, and I was from that town. So again, maybe understood the institution a bit better as a result. So there are a handful of variables that I think led me to being well prepared for the experience. And again, mostly just kind of dumb luck, right? That I had those working in my favor. In terms of what I think I got from it, distinct from the kind of person that I was going in, I would say that, as is the case with just about anybody who I know of who went to a service academy, it does instill discipline. It does really demand that you become an effective steward of your own time, and a disciplined user of it. I would say also that the service academies, the Air Force Academy specifically, are like probably many other colleges, universities, like any other college and university, are places where you can really get out as much as you put in. And so I would say that I really tried really hard to put in as much as I physically could to try to get out as much as I physically could. And it really paid off. Now, would I recommend, sleeping only a couple hours a night for months on end, trying to switch your double major late in the game while you're, have practice and whatever else to juggle? No, I would not. And that is mostly a reflection of my changing priorities and the fact that I hadn't quite done the hard work. And it is hard work to figure out what I wanted specifically out of the experience. I was just trying to invest as much as I possibly could of myself in all the parts of my life and kind of see what happens, which ended up with, leading me to some great opportunities. I got to go to grad school right out of the academy. I ended up getting to fly, which is, my lifelong kind of dream. I ended up being able to effectively walk on the academy hockey team, and by the time I was a senior, be a no kidding rostered member of the team, which were all these huge goals of mine that I did get to realize. So long answer to a relatively short question, but I would say that my experience is unique, but also not that unique among service academy athletes.
Yeah. Now, did you realize early on that your goal was to fly, or was it, because you talked about going to different schools before, going into the Air Force, but was it a goal once you realized that you were going into the service academy, or was it something that was in the back of your mind that you might do?
No, my dad is a pilot, my grandfather as well. So I always knew, well, pretty much always knew that I wanted to give that a shot to be an Air Force pilot. And so that predated really hockey stuff in general and the Air Force Academy.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? And how much of like how many stories did you get from your dad and your grandfather, if you sat and talked with them about being a pilot, that now that you are a pilot have kind of a different ring to them?
Yeah, I would say that's a spot on kind of way to describe it. My dad and my grandfather are both uniquely good, I would say, at sharing their experience without kind of pressuring me to make the same decisions that they did. And so now it's this great thing that we can kind of share similar experiences and it's been really gratifying as a result. Never anything that I felt any kind of pressure to do from my family, um, but really just this kind of great option that I was aware of because of their experience and got the opportunity to do.
Yeah. Now, how hard was it? Obviously, because your goal is to fly, and you're changing a major, and you have to study a lot. When you change your majors, you're taking a lot of courses. How hard was that athlete part of it? That was kind of secondary in that regard, because you had so much other work to do. How hard was it to stay focused on being an athlete as well? I mean, obviously, as a service member, you're incredibly disciplined, but the athlete part of it seems a little bit like it's extra at certain points, right? So how hard was it to stay focused on that?
Yeah, it definitely makes it harder. I would say that I made pretty clear choices about what to put my priority on, whether consciously or otherwise. I'm not totally sure. I think because I had academic success at the academy well before I had athletic success. I think the argument can be made that I never had all that much athletic success at the academy. I did get on the roster and get to play a couple of games late my senior season, but I was by no means one of the leading contributors on the ice. So for me, the schoolwork came first, and given the choice to sacrifice, say, rest that I felt like my body probably needed to perform at its best on the ice, or an extra couple hours of work late into the night, such that I could try to keep my GPA up. I chose the latter every time. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was possible to do that without kind of letting down my brothers in the locker room, because I wasn't on the ice on the weekend. So I could do that. The guys who I was really impressed by are the ones who could do all the above while actually playing on the weekends. And so I had a couple of classmates who were able to keep these incredible academic records and really perform to an incredible level on the ice. And those are the guys that I would really be impressed by, because that was much harder, because they didn't have, at least from the outside looking in, didn't have the kind of easy way out that I had, where I could just, not sleep and get the extra work done, and that would be okay.
Mm-hmm. Now, as an athlete, you said you weren't on the ice very much, but what are some of the stories and times that you remember being on the ice that had a huge impact on you, that you will probably remember a little bit more vividly than some of the things you're doing when you're in an airplane?
Yeah, I've been asked this question a handful of times about what are my favorite hockey memories. To be honest, I don't know that I have. I never won the state championship in high school. I was never, I never made the sort of game preserving save in a late, championship game in college. And so I have great memories of hockey, and I think it has given me so much. And so the answer that I typically go to are I really feel like I got a lot out of the time that I was able to spend with teammates and folks that I got so incredibly close to. We had unique and weird experiences as a result of being an Air Force Academy hockey team, where we end up all piled into the belly of some Air Force cargo jet that, as it turns out, was pretty old and we kind of would look around and go, yeah, really, this is what we're taking on our trip to Alaska? That's a little concerning. But it ends up, being great and being a very cool, unique experience in the end. So that's my lame answer to that question.
No, that's an awesome answer. I mean, not a lot of people can say I'm headed to Alaska in this, really old plane or anything else like that. But that's pretty cool. And when it comes to training, and a lot of athletes, they're able to kind of utilize training as an athlete in real life. How much of your training as an athlete are you able to use, if anything at all, with your job now?
Man, I would say that my job now is one that uniquely lends itself to the mindset and the approach of a high level athlete. So I fly in the Air Force, and I fly a fighter, which is an F-15, a two-seat fighter. So I'm up front, and I have a teammate in the back who runs a lot of sensor stuff and ensures that we get the mission accomplished. And it is a really fast-paced, really information dense, and really both physically and mentally challenging environment. And so if those three things sound familiar to anybody who's played sports at a high level, it's no coincidence.
Yeah.
So I would say that the ability to do those things well, to sort of take in information, synthesize it, and make decisions really quickly in situations that are physically and mentally really tough, is absolutely what it takes to be a good pilot. I won't say it's what it takes to become a great pilot, because I'm not one yet, and so I don't know. But I suspect that similar skill sets are involved. At least it looks like that from the great pilots I get to fly with.
Yeah. So what's it like being a pilot? We've talked a lot about sports, but this is very unique, right? Most people aren't hopping in a plane and, flying as fast as they can and being in the air as much as you are. So what's it like being a pilot?
Well, again, it's a pretty similar experience to being an athlete at a relatively high level. The day-to-day of a pilot is very intense, very demanding. You have to know a lot. You have to know a lot about the machine that you're operating. You have to know a lot about yourself, and you have to be very disciplined in building those skills and then utilizing them. So on a day-to-day basis, it varies a lot based on what time we're taking off that day. If I'm flying in the air, or if I'm flying a simulator, or if I'm doing more kind of ground-based mission preparation. But also similar to the sports world, many hours of prep for each individual hour of execution. And so a typical day involves lots of hours of prep. You might get up early if you're flying early. You might get up late if you're, say, flying at night. But being disciplined with your day and the mission preparation hours is absolutely critical. And then when it comes time to perform, we are meticulous and really methodical about briefing and debriefing and talking through ad nauseum, which might sound familiar to anybody who's been through a Coach Frank Sartori tape review of a weekend's games the previous weekend. We are super meticulous with the briefing and debriefing and talking through the both everything from the basics to the nuances of what we're going to do that day in the year, and then going out and executing to the highest degree possible. And then when invariably we screw lots of stuff up, we come back and talk about each of those things in equally minute detail.
Yeah. What was it like for the training, and then first time you got into a plane? What was that like?
Yeah, a little surreal, a little jarring, a little surreal, very exciting, definitely. So lots and lots, as you might imagine, lots and lots of ground-based training comes first before you ever actually touch an airplane that goes, up into the air. And then when you first get to one, it at least for me, and I think for most, if not all, is a little overwhelming because there's so much information. There's such a kind of huge world out there that you are now find yourself in and having to navigate. That it's definitely tough. I got airsick when I first started flying, and so that was this whole challenge where I had to force my body and convince my body that no, this is okay. This is something that we're trying to do on purpose, I promise. So that made it tough to sort of break into flying. So it's this kind of huge experience, or at least it was for me, with different elements of everything from just excitement to sheer panic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So last question for you. And I said, this is something, before we started that, I wanted you to probably think about, whether it's as a pilot or as an athlete. What's a piece of advice that, you could pass on to that next generation that could help them, prepare them for whether it's picking college or entering the workforce or anything else that, that you kind of replay over and over in your mind and you wish somebody would have told you?
I would say that some of the best advice that I ever got is to spend the time early on to sit down and reflect on what you really want out of these big experiences that are coming up. So if you're, say, a high school athlete, I was looking at as you're playing college sports, I would say that it will pay huge dividends if you sit down, ideally with a couple of people who are close to you, know you well, and whose opinion you think highly of, and decide, okay, what do I really want out of this experience, out of these experiences? What in the long term would I like to set myself up for doing, and why? And the why is probably the most important question, because I think if I had spent the time early on to think about what I wanted to do in life and why, what the choices that I made subsequently would have been far, far easier and far more grounded in the things that were really important to me. And so, some of the stuff we've already talked about is a direct result of me not doing that work early on, having to kind of catch up later. And I think it's super common that young people don't sit down and take the time to sort of answer those questions for themselves. And if your answers to those questions change along the way, that's great. I know mine have at various points. I thought maybe I wasn't going to fly and I was going to try to do something else in the Air Force, and was pretty convinced about it. And then I came back around to the flying thing. And so even though those answers have changed along the way, the kinds of things that I've been able to do and the way that I get to lead my life on a daily basis, I think is pretty reflective of what really matters to me and what I find important in my value set and what I want to be doing, both now and to set myself up for what comes next. And I'm lucky in that even though I didn't do the work to figure those things out as a young person, I had people around me who were great mentors and able to guide me into these great opportunities, even if I didn't quite have figured out what I wanted to do and why. But if I had spent that time, made that investment, I think I would have been much better off. And the various decisions that faced me as a young person and will face many young people, especially student athletes, would have been A, far easier, and B, made from a far more informed about what I really wanted and why place.
That's great. That's great. I mean, that's definitely something that, whether it is for the next generation of high school or college athletes, or, an adult, such as myself, like that's a great aspect to really kind of look at. So I really appreciate you taking the time out and sitting and talking with us today about, basically everything, athletes, Air Force. I mean, I was really intrigued probably more by the Air Force part of it, because it's not something that a lot of people get to experience. So I was, probably a little more gung-ho to pick your brain about that than being an athlete. But, I appreciate you really opening up and giving us everything. You got anything else for us before we let you go?
All right. It's been great to be with you. Thanks.